From a man whose tenor sounds eerily similar to the voice of your conscience, this is the Daniel Natal Show. Within the next 10 years, we could have more than 100,000 satellites encasing our planet. In a previous report we did, Jeff Bezos stepped down as CEO of Amazon not to retire, but to dedicate himself to his Blue Horizon project to create reusable rockets to get more satellites in space. As we explained then, satellites will represent the new trade lanes. Instead of empires being determined by who control the naval trade lanes, with us since the age of mercantilism, we're transitioning from the industrial age to the post-industrial age, which means that we're moving from a society that makes things to a society that generates more money by transmitting information. Think of how Google makes more money than a local hardware supply company or a corporation that manufactures yo-yos by trading in data. Just so, the power brokers of the future will depend more on information than on selling you hamburgers. Jeff Bezos, in wanting to get into the satellite business, will be like a latter-day railroad baron. Economist Carlotta Perez says that the Industrial Revolution happened in various waves. In Wave 1, we had steam power, which happened in England. This gave us the steam engine, the locomotive, and so forth. In Wave 2, we got electricity, which happened in America. We're on the cusp of Wave 3 now, where we're going to be less into products and services than into data transmission. There are sociological upheavals every time we go through a shift like this, of course. In Wave 1, the locomotive produced massive effects on society. For one, it happened at a time when America was expanding across the continent. Without the railroad stitching the country together, it's unlikely that such a mammoth nation could have coalesced. This, of course, gave massive power to the first railroad barons. For the most part, they abused this power, which is why early movies showed the railroad baron as the favorite villain, tying maidens to railroad tracks or foreclosing on orphanages. The run-up to the Civil War was precipitated by the railroad barons using government as a sock puppet to invoke eminent domain to tax farmers off their land so that the railroads could expand their territory. In 1861, Lincoln, who himself started out as a railroad lawyer whose Senate and presidential campaigns were financed by the railroad trusts, admitted that the Civil War did not start because of slavery, but because of the heavy taxes imposed on the South to acquire land from farmers who had been pushed off their property. In the book Rockefeller Medicine Men, we read, because of the important logistical role of the railroads, the Civil War has been called the First Railroad War. Yet the war did not rely on an industrial economy. As William Appleman Williams aptly puts it, the Civil War produced an industrial system, rather than being fought with one. The ultimate victors of the war were the corporations and the men who, for the most part, ruled the new economy. John F. Kennedy, in his book Profiles in Courage, lamented the fact that before the Civil War, the people in the Senate were philosophers and statesmen, whereas after the Civil War, they were the puppets of the corporations. Before the national calamity, they were the senator who represented Georgia or New York or Kentucky, whereas after, they were representatives of the railroad trusts or oil concerns or the financial sector. Corruption became endemic, and we lurched into what is now known as the Gilded Age, the America of Boss Tweed, Tammany Hall, and legendary corruption. Now that we're on the cusp of this new phase of economic development, transitioning from the industrial age to the post-industrial age, a similar cycle seems to be developing, with Jeff Bezos jockeying for the role of John D. Rockefeller from the first go-round. He knows that whoever controls space will control the future economy, so his company Blue Horizon is getting the satellites up into space with reusable rockets, while Amazon's Kuiper project builds the satellites. He's not alone in this desire to be one of the new railroad barons. If Bezos is the reincarnation of Rockefeller, then Elon Musk is angling to be E.H. Harriman, Rockefeller's rival in the 19th century. This rivalry is probably why Musk just made the news by taking a swipe at Bezos, who owns the Washington Post. Musk was talking to a reporter from that paper, whereupon Musk quipped, "Give my regards to your puppet master." As of 2020, Elon Musk's company SpaceX has launched over 700 satellites into orbit. Over the next 5 years, he plans to launch an additional 12,000. By 2029, he plans on getting 57,000 satellites up into space. Musk and Bezos are not alone, with China's Hanzhen project wanting to put up their own satellite network into space, meaning that the Earth will be encased in over 100,000 satellites within the next 10 years. George Friedman of Stratfor has warned that World War III will not happen in the Balkans like World War I, but will likely happen in space due to the satellites.
The center of gravity of American military power right now is located in space. Everything from navigation to communication to intelligence operates in space. If any power were to knock the United States out, it would have to knock out our space-based assets. So today, any war with a peer power would begin with what's called the space Pearl Harbor, which is whoever it is, Russia, China, anybody who'd want to, would have to blind us. By 2050, this is simply going to become more intensely the case.
It's always good to remember that over the past 500 years, most large-scale global conflicts happened due to nations fighting over naval trade routes and overseas colonies. We had a brief cessation of this after World War II because the United States did something unusual. It bribed the rest of the world not to fight. The deal was simple. America would offer to police the naval trade route so that other nations didn't have to have deep-sea navies, bringing conflicts to a minimum, which means they could use their money not on militaries, but on giving free college to their citizens or healthcare. That was a good deal. America would stand the titanic expense of keeping the trade lanes open, and in the process, forfeit its own economic dominance as they gave over trade to competitors like China, Germany, or France. And all these other countries had to do was side with us against the Soviets. Well, guess what? The Soviet Union is gone. The expensive post-World War II system is breaking down. America can no longer afford it. Nations will once again have to vie with each other over global trade lanes, except the new trade lanes will be up in space. This is why Trump created Space Force. Given these political realities, you can see how dangerous it is for Elon Musk to be acting as a sort of cyber mercenary, using SpaceX to place ever cheaper satellites in lower Earth orbit for foreign countries like India, Turkey, Egypt, and so forth. As the price falls, so the satellites will proliferate over our heads, upping the chances for war as these new countries jostle for position and power. Elon Musk may be so future-centric that he's unaware of the historical templates from the past that he's unconsciously emulating. As George Santayana famously said, those who do not know the past are condemned to repeat it. Musk himself is a sort of retread of his own grandfather, Joshua Haldeman, who was a pioneer of the technocracy movement. For those who don't know, the technocracy movement began in the 1920s with an American named Howard Scott who wanted to radically change the way society was run. Nation-states, he considered, were too primitive and erratic. He famously said that Marxism, fascism, and democracy were not radical enough. Society needed to be run along scientific lines by trained experts. Technocrats. We live with a lot of the ideas of technocracy today, such as carbon credits, which was a concept stolen from the Bible of technocracy from 1920, Wealth, Virtual Wealth, and Debt by Frederick Soddy. Soddy wanted to decouple economics from supply and demand and hook it onto energy consumption. There is, of course, something of an irony here, because the 21st century technocrats trying to get us off of fossil fuels and onto solar are somewhat unaware that Soddy would have considered fossil fuels a form of renewable solar energy. In fact, Soddy saw all energy as stored solar energy. He said, all the requirements of pre-scientific men were met out of the solar energy of their own times. The food they ate, the clothes they wore, and the wood they burnt could be envisaged as regard the energy content which gave them use value as stores of sunlight. But in burning coal, one releases a store of sunshine that reached the earth millions of years ago. Insofar as it can be used for the purposes of life, the scale of living may be, to almost any necessary extent, augmented. A hamburger you eat is based on a cow who consumed grass, which acquired its energy from the sun. So the calories in the burger are stored solar energy. Likewise, the petroleum in the ground. It comes from plant matter that rotted on the earth millions of years ago. If it decayed in an anaerobic environment, it would morph into what we know as crude oil. So the term fossil fuel is a misnomer. It doesn't come from dinosaurs as we were told as kids, and it's not rare at all. Petroleum prices were artificially hiked by people creating the myth of artificial scarcity in order to synthetically increase its value. Kind of like how the international diamond trade creates artificial scarcity in that market to convince you that diamonds are rare. They're not. So long as plants die and decay, we will have a renewable source of energy. And that energy is, as you guessed it, a form of stored solar energy. The irony is that burning coal or using oil to run electricity power plants is so efficient that it leaves solar panels and wind in the dust. After Fukushima, Germany, for instance, publicly declared that it would abandon nuclear and all fossil fuels and switch over to solar and wind. What was less well publicized, however, was that Germany hemorrhaged energy, only to be able to obtain a fraction of their former energy through windmills and solar panels. So they quietly went back to filthy anthracite coal from the 1720s to meet their energy needs. Kind of like opening a hot rod's engine and seeing a hamster wheel under the hood. Although to be fair, the coal, in terms of energy output, is the hot rod, with the solar panels and windmills being the hamster wheel. Long story short, the technocrats from the 1920s would not have considered crude oil anything but a renewable form of solar energy. People like Elon Musk's grandfather, Joshua Haldeman, would have agreed. Musk's ideas and operating system are not based on a blank slate. He comes from a genealogical line dedicated to overthrowing the old order and installing technocracy. Musk probably does not shy away from a coming global war, because war has always been helpful in clearing away old systems and establishing new ones. As the smoke clears, like after the Civil War, he hopes to emerge as one of the new age's railroad barons. which is ironic given the fact that the old Northern Pacific Railroad symbol was the yin-yang, which is also the symbol, coincidentally, of the technocracy movement. Quite an amusing example of serendipity for Elon Musk, our new technocratic railroad baron. People fear any political leader who has his finger on the red button. What political leaders fear is people having their finger on the red button, the subscribe button. Push it and see their narratives explode. Also consider donating to help keep these videos coming. And don't forget our website and newsletter, thenewamerican.com.